Whether it's a blow to the ego, an embarrassing defeat, or a gruesome devastation, there are many different ways for a villain to be brutally taken down,
no matter the hero they were up against.
These two faced off in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 31 during the Enemy of the State story arc. We're talking about Gorgon and Wolverine. Now, Gorgon is known for being a fearsome villain who can, as his codename implies, turn his enemies to stone with just one simple little glance. In fact, Gorgon has actually successfully killed Wolverine before. That's just how even of a match this was going into it. He then had Wolverine resurrected and brainwashed him so that he might use him as his own assassin, turning him against his friends and colleagues in the hero community. I hate when that happens. In the end though, Wolverine got him back. During their fight in issue number 31, Wolverine seems to take a page out of Perseus's book. He defeats Gorgon using his own claws to reflect his own gaze back onto himself. Genius. Turning Gorgon into stone before then shattering him into a million pieces. You're not coming back from that easy.
The villain known as Mr. Mxyzptlk is technically a bad guy, but he's more just a reality warping nuisance for the Man of Steel, and he absolutely did not deserve what happened to him in Superman Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. In the story, a wide array of Superman's villains all make their play on the Man of Steel, and after he naturally defeats everyone, he is still left wondering who organized all these ne'er-do-wells. Turns out it was Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mix reveals himself and goes on a villain monologue about how basically he has lived for a long time and he's kinda bored of being mischievous, so now he wants to be evil, and his first evil act will be taking out Superman himself. The fifth dimensional imp then reveals his monstrous true form and goes on the attack. Now luckily for Supes, he grabbed the Phantom Zone projector and he used it on the villain, but at the same time, trying to escape, Mr. Mix spoke his name backwards. With both things happening at the same time, Mxyzptlk was completely torn in half between both the Phantom Zone and the fifth dimension.
This one was a disturbing, heart-wrenching, and shocking moment from season 1 of Peacemaker, a series that surprised me in so many ways, and in so many of them delightful ones. One such startling moment happens when Peacemaker is forced to face off against his dad, White Dragon. While we know pretty early on that Peacemaker's dad, Augie Smith, is pretty much the worst role model or parent anyone could ask for, we also see that Chris Smith, aka Peacemaker, still cares deeply for his father, despite all the awful things his dad has done to him. Rather than rightfully blame his father for his messed up upbringing, Chris seems to just blame himself almost just as much, if not actually more, making the moment when he actually faces his father a tense one. Years of pent-up rage, disappointment, shame, and frustration manifest in a single instant when White Dragon goads his son into killing him, commenting on the fact that he doesn't believe his son is in essence strong enough to even do so, and in the process causing Peacemaker to snap, resulting in him doing just that, killing his own supervillain father.
Rudolph Jones found himself exposed to a strange form of radiation which changed him into the bald, green-skinned parasite with the ability to absorb the life and energy of others. In Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, issue number 86, Parasite is released from an area he is being held in and goes on a rampage, draining multiple people of their life energy, including Firehawk, who fell pretty easily to this villain. Now luckily the hero Firestorm is nearby. At this point in time, Firestorm has become the world's fire elemental and received a pretty significant power boost. Firestorm comes in hot literally on Parasite with a blast of flame, and then when Parasite tries to drain Firestorm's power, the hero is completely unaffected. He delivers this cold line about how he himself is just straight up power incarnate, and in a desperate effort, Parasite tries to trade energy blasts with Firestorm. Unfortunately for Parasite, it is nowhere near an equal fight. He uses up all the energy he took, and then just trying to hold back Firestorm's blasts, Parasite goes through his own reserved energy as well, to the point that he is on the brink. He even starts to beg Firestorm to stop, but he had every intention of taking Parasite's life until his friends show up and pull him back. It's actually a really dark scene.
In issue 116 of Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter crosses paths with, get this, Sabretooth, when he shows up to attack Black Cat, who had just escaped the Foreigner's clutches. Sabretooth was sent to make her pay, and while Felicia doesn't seem to be too afraid of Sabretooth's threats to skin her alive, Spider-Man returns just as Victor is set to pounce. The two tussle and Peter leaves Victor crying out when he shoots him in the face with webbing. Victor rips it off his face, in the process doing damage with his own claws. Even though Peter tried to warn warn him to not do that, proving that not only is Spider-Man stronger than Sabretooth this time around, but he also seems to be quite a bit smarter here too.
In Spawn number 27, we learn of Philip Kron, who has spent his entire life studying the occult so that one day he could gain access to heaven. Now, I'm not really sure that's how that works, but either way. Calling himself the Curse, Philip decided the best thing to do in his heavenly endeavor would be to bring down the Hellspawn Al Simmons. Now, Spawn was an agent of heaven at that point and was imbued with mystical energy, which Philip would then siphon off for himself. But because he is clearly no match for Spawn, Philip goes with a complete sneak attack on Simmons, blowing a hole clear through Spawn's chest. Unsurprisingly, Spawn wasn't especially pleased about being ambushed, so he tracks down the Curse and blasts off his bionic arm. The two then engaged in a battle, but since Spawn was at full power and the Curse was just a crazy guy in a costume, he didn't really last very long at all. Spawn beat the absolute beans out of the Curse and then strung up his almost lifeless body against a wall in an alleyway to ward off any further enemies. That would have resulted in Philip's passing, but his fate was somehow even worse later on. You'll have to read for that one.
This one is truly brutal and devastating for me because, in a way, Starro was quite a misguided villain. In James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Starro is cast in the role of antagonist, but Starro is not malicious here per se, or at least not malicious without cause, let's just say that. Starro is an alien who was captured and used for various experiments as part of Project Starfish. The Suicide Squad has been sent in to shut down said project after the United States learned of how dangerous the project could be if unleashed on the entire world. When the team finally uncover the truth behind Project Starfish, it's too late and they accidentally unleash the captive, mind-controlling cosmic being, Starro, on the world. Amanda Waller is surprisingly fine with this, as it will destabilize Corto Maltese, which actually benefits the US. However, the squad decide to rebel against Waller and take on Starro anyways, because they're like, we should save these people, a lot of these people are innocents. Thanks to a combination of commitment and luck, they manage to defeat Starro, but as Starro and all their offspring lay dying, Starro broadcasts their last thoughts, reminiscing on what their life was like prior to being taken captive on Earth. I was happy, floating, staring at the stars.
Okay, so spoilers for The Boys comic book series, which finished in 2012, so you've had over 10 years to get caught up. What was arguably the biggest twist of the comic came near the end of the story, in issue number 65 specifically. Luckily, this twist does not seem to be present in the show given what's already happened, but basically, it turns out that Black Noir is secretly a Homelander clone. He was created with the whole purpose of being meant to take Homelander down if he ever lost control. The problem is, Homelander enjoyed being a puppet for Vought International, and that put Homelander in their good graces, so he never ended up going rogue. This made Black Noir incredibly frustrated, as that was his life's only true purpose and he had been denied it for years and years and years. So, in the final issues of The Boys, after slowly watching Homelander grow more and more insane, he finally snapped and attacked the White House, taking out the president. This finally gave Black Noir the go-ahead to finally do what he was finally made to do finally. He shows up to go to the White House in the 65th issue, reveals himself as a clone, and then goes for an absolute slogfest against the completely shocked Homelander. They quite literally rip each other to shreds, with Black Noir coming out technically on top before he stepped out onto the front lawn, missing significant chunks of his body. This is when the US military, alongside Billy Butcher, brought this insane soup to his brutal end with some final blows from Billy Butcher's crowbar and his fist.
Geist vs. Magneto has to be one of my favorite all-time short-lived and brutal villain versus villain fights. Though really, between them, it's pretty apparent that Geist is the real villain here, I think. Magneto ends up doing his best to catch Geist and ends up running into him after he escapes punishment in Terra Verde, in the late 80s Wolverine series. Magneto lures Geist out with a little mechanical toy and makes short work of him. While his fate isn't explicitly shown here, considering that Geist is a cyborg and Magneto is the master of magnetism, we can imagine how brutal this fight would be, yeah? And based on what we do see of what happens to the decoy robot toy I was talking about, it's probably not pretty whatever goes on off page.
And we aren't done with Spawn. This time we're going to issue number 322. Essentially, there was this vampire named Paul, and he had taken a girl and he had been keeping her in his house for years and years. He's truly pretty despicable, and Spawn doesn't let that kind of thing slide. Spawn's anger and rage made him so powerful that none of Paul's attempts to stop the Hellspawn even fazed him, him, and Al quickly incapacitated the vampire using a horrifying amount of bugs. When Paul comes back to, he is chained up and it has been 5 days since the vampire last fed. On top of that, Spawn had controlled some roaches to go inside of Paul and eat away at anything that was keeping him alive. So this guy is starving. Spawn then lets a mouse go down a very skinny hallway and informs Paul that along with the mouse there is even more food for him at the end of the hallway, and he can either go down it or stay where he is and be consumed by roaches. As you can imagine, Paul chooses the hallway, but Spawn had also removed all the spikes from his costume and put them on either side of said hallway, so Paul has to be torn to pieces if he wants to go to get to the other side, all while the bugs are coming after him. But when he finally forces his way through, Spawn is waiting there with Paul's mistreated dogs who have also not eaten in 5 days. Spawn gives Paul the key to the exit, which is back at the other end of the hallway covered in spikes and hungry insects, and needless to say, Paul doesn't make it through.
That's all we got, folks.
Thanks for checking us out here on Top 10 Nerd.
I'm Amanda McKnight.
And I'm Adam Andrews. We will catch you on the flippity flop, but until then, stay safe and peace out, nerds.
Stay nerdy. Bye.
No matter the hero they were up against. Nailed that one.
Nailed it. You're like, I have this one line. I'm gonna crush it. And using his claws to reflect his own glaze. His own glaze. He got glaze. Glaze like a donut.
The villain known as Mr. Mixes Pitalik. I don't want to piss off all the nerds again.
I say it. Mixius Pitalik.
I say Mixes Pitalik, but people get weird. I don't know. Turns out it was Mr. Mixes Pitalik. I'm gonna say that name like 4 different times. That's what I'm gonna do right now.